All right, Middlecoff, 49ers just wrapped up their draft week Monday press conference. It was supposed to be just John Lynch. We got a bonus Kyle Shanahan because why not? He's having fun.
Bet he is.
He's enjoying this. I'm enjoying this.
Bet he is. It's
yeah, we're streaming. Here we go.
We live?
We live, baby.
Woo!
We are live. So what do you think?
I mean, I don't think we learned anything that we didn't know beside the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo is not going to be on this team by the end of the week. Like, it's just whether it's Friday morning, Friday afternoon, Saturday. Remember the Trent Williams trade happened, I think, Saturday last year, if I remember correctly, on the third day of the draft.
23rd or 24th.
It was the third day of the draft. It didn't happen the first or second, but Jimmy's done. So, I mean, I think that's just one thing we all just can embrace. Like, Jimmy's not going to be on the team anymore, which I've been saying from the jump is the right move. They need to recoup some draft picks, but I think that I feel pretty confident just in his answer. Basically, he doesn't want to lie. And when they said, can you feel confident that Jimmy's going to be on Saturday? He can't say no because he knows that they're going to – I mean, there's a chance that depending on who gets quarterbacks, right? But if New England gets left at the altar or Denver or just some of these other teams, that Jimmy's going to end up being one of their quarterbacks. If that can get him a second-round pick, it's the right move to make.
Ben Volen wrote this morning, so far today, there's a lot of Kuiper, McShay, King, Pelissaro. This was as of 9 a.m. Pacific, so maybe I haven't updated this list, but a lot of moving up, and Peter King's was Garoppolo could be more available than he's been, which, yeah, the second the Niners draft a quarterback, Garoppolo becomes more available than he's been. I also think, one thing Shanahan just said was that, and again, he did a lot of maybes. Kyle basically talked in this press conference the way NFL reporters have tweeted for the last month. Like, maybe we like him, maybe we don't. Like, I don't want everybody to know. Perhaps. One thing he kind of said, the reason I bring that up is because I'm going to kind of quote him, although I didn't get all his maybes and perhapses in there. But basically what he said was, yeah, it might have been that we liked the guy when we made the trade and we liked other guys, and the guy that we liked has gotten better in our eyes, and the other guys have gotten better in our eyes. He basically said we like everybody more than we did when we did the deal. Now, does that mean that number 2 passed number 1 or number 3 passed number 1? We'll find out. I don't know. But what I'm saying is it might be that they are even more comfortable today than they were a month ago playing right away whoever they are going to draft. It might be that a month ago they liked Trey Lance, John. And part of working out Trey Lance was let's find out not by camp, but let's find out by the weekend of the draft whether or not we're comfortable making Trey Lance our starting quarterback. Because if that's the case, we could draft Trey Lance and trade Jimmy before the draft is over, right? Like that, maybe that's part of what they were just doing over the last month, trying to determine whether or not they felt like they needed Garoppolo to stick around for whoever they draft.
And there's no way to really know that, right? No. I mean, it would be a gut feel and instincts. Like, I just truly believe to my core, it's never been easier to play the position. So worst case scenario, you throw the guy out there. Like I saw some people, and again, I hate doing this. I heard Beth Scourgeon do this last night on Sunday Night Baseball.
Santa Maria.
Like, social media saying, like the 3% of the population's on Twitter. But I do think the Mac Jones, the conversation is out there. Everything you read on Twitter is like Justin Fields is out. I've heard from a reliable source that has been right on absolutely everything he's fed me for the last year that he thinks Justin Fields the pick. And I think part of what today kind of showed is I am not expecting just to be that the media is right on this. Now, I'm not saying they're wrong. We're about to find out. But I think there could be a curveball coming Thursday night. And I think the Niners kind of enjoy that. And with the two guys specifically, they take Mac Jones or they take Justin Fields, there is no sitting either one of those guys. Those guys play right away. Now, Trey Lance, I guess you could justify, but like you said, the more and more research you do with the guy, maybe you feel like we'll live with his growing pains. But I guess the thing I saw on social media is like, how are they going to win the West with Trey Lance or Mac Jones? Guys, they finished dead last year. Like this isn't This isn't fucking the New England Patriots for 20 years. They've won the division once in 4 years. Like, the goal, let's face it, they're just trying to get back to the playoffs. They had one great year, but if next year they can win 9, 10 games and win a wild card, that's a huge step. And we've seen Jimmy, and like I think Kyle admitted what everyone knew. The reason they made this trade was not because they thought Jimmy's a scrub or sucks. Strictly, he gets injured all the time. Like, he just said that. Like, the reason we made the trade is because Jimmy just constantly isn't available. And we've told him that. I mean, he knows it. I mean, it's not like, it's the elephant in the room that everyone knows. But, like, there is no guarantee that if they had rolled back Jimmy and he's the starter and Trey Lance the backup, they would win the division. Like, I don't think winning the division, I guess it's the goal, but that's definitely not the standard. I mean, if they win 9 or 10 games and get in the playoffs, that's a fucking big-time year, right?
Yeah.
The goal here to me is to make the playoffs.
Winning the division is significant not because you hang division banners, but because it gives you a better chance in the playoffs. That's what makes the division significant. Right?
100%. But my point is the other three of his 4 years, I mean, they just have not gone. So,
right,
like we experienced last year, like 6-10, they finished last in the division. Last.
Yeah, I mean, part of the standard you set for yourself is based on how good you think you can be. Like, they think their roster's pretty good, right? So if Trey Lance is on their team and they're not starting him, it's because they feel like they can't make up the gap between how good he could be in year one and what they think they should get out of their roster in year one. But if you're not going to start Trey Lance in year one, it better be because you think you can go really far, not because, well, we think Jimmy can win us the wild card. Well, if that's the case, start the young kid, right?
Yeah.
Like, that would be the argument. But I think back to your point on the trade. One thing is clear. Like, Kyle, this is something he has kind of said before, but he made it crystal clear today. I've seen teams trade 2-1s for a safety. I've seen teams trade. He's talking about Jamal Adams. He's talking about Jalen Ramsey. Who's the other safety he's talking about?
I think he was just specifically talking about those two guys.
I thought he said two safeties, and then I saw another team do it with a corner. But in any event, he's talking about those two teams at least, right? In his own division. And he's going, I coach against them. I think it was worth it for them to do.
Here's where I'd push back on using that, comparing it to the quarterback. They are established star players, right? I mean, Jalen Ramsey's the best corner in the league, and Jamal Adams is a Pro Bowler. So part of it, and listen, I think Kyle is a star. I think he's very smart, and I'm glad he's the coach of the 49ers. I do think that coaches don't look at draft capital the way I just came up on the side of personnel, and the way that I think a lot of media talk about it is more personnel driven than coaching. He doesn't care. Like,
value.
A first round pick to Kyle is not what it would mean to if you just pulled Kevin Colbert, Spielman, John Schneider, Veach. Like, that's a valuable asset to Kyle. It's like just his asset to get what he wants.
Right.
And coaches think more in the short term. And so it's like, okay, you're talking about Jalen Ramsey and Jamal Adams. Well, Kyle, one guy was a 6th pick that you passed on for, and again, I'm not trying to talk shit, but you took Solomon Thomas over that guy. He was a star. And Jalen Ramsey, I think, was the 5th overall pick and was immediately elite. Like, those guys, I think if you wanted to throw Khalil Mack in there too, who got traded for a boatload, actually less than those guys because they did a pick swap, those guys got traded for 2 1s and a 2, both of them, same price. But you're getting an established player. Now it's more complicated because you have to extend them. Like, part of, I think it's easier to justify this is you're getting a cost-controlled asset immediately. It's always why I push back playing the guy
and
right
they play
away,
quarterback.
And the quarterback, which
just the positional value versus
gets
safety.
Very expensive. Yeah. That's why, I mean, Deshaun Watson, who you would say is like the equivalent of Jamal Adams or Jalen Ramsey, right? Just at the more important position.
Yeah.
No one ever said like, oh, you can get him for 2 1s and a 2, right? That was not. It was like, is it 4 1s and like 2 players, right? It was just basically, if we just put it into numerical, in a currency, if those 2 guys cost $1 million of cash, Deshaun was $2 million. And if they were equal ability, right? Like all Pro Bowlers,
yeah,
the quarterback costs double. So I understand what he's saying. I do think, though, the way GMs talk about it and think about it is a little different than even he just explained it.
Yeah, but I would say if I were going to take his side on this, which I do think it's sound logic, when you're a general manager and you do it, you are still not in control of what happens next. You rely on your coach to make it work. When you're the coach and you do it, part of this is based in the belief that you have a guy that you can go get, and it's on you now to help make it worthwhile, right? Like, if it works, and I'm not who they draft Thursday, but if it works in the end 2 or 3 years from now, there's not really a debate about whether or not, it was worth moving up from 12 to 3 for 2-1s. There is not a debate. Like, one thing I thought Kyle said that was great was there is no position in sports that has more pressure than the quarterback. This was in response to, like, is there going to be a lot of pressure on this person if it's not the guy fans want? And he's like, look, the pressure is coming one way or the other. It's either coming now or it's coming later. It's either you all love the pick. The guy throws 4 picks, Justin Fields, week 1. Here comes the pressure. You win a Super Bowl. Guess what happens the next year? Here comes the pressure. Like, Patrick Mahomes is established, but it's not as if now maybe Patrick doesn't feel the pressure, but from the outside. But you don't think there's pressure from within Patrick Mahomes? You don't think there's a high standard that Andy Reid, Andy, holds Patrick to? Like, okay, we just raised the bar. In the words of Rob Gronkowski, like, I just took the bar up to here. After he caught a football from 600 feet out of a helicopter, the ba, as he calls it. But, like, so I think Kyle's right. And I think it is pretty short-sighted, even though I think there's a lot of logic to all the different ways we've talked about this. But just to say, like, okay, you make the pick Thursday, and now we know now all the pressure is on this guy. Well, the guy who you take is going to feel pressure no matter he's loved by the fans or not, because the second he throws 3 picks, it gets booed. It doesn't matter that 6 months ago people loved the pick.
Well, it reminds me of hearing who Roger Maris's kid talk about when they broke the record. And this is just the reality why you can't listen to the noise, is the media used to pepper him when he'd take a day off, like, are you scared to break Babe Ruth's record? And then when he'd be in the lineup, like, do you really want to ruin the best record in the history of sports?
Right.
Like,
You're not worthy.
Yeah, you can't win either way. It is why you cannot listen to any of the outside noise. You are paid $10 million. Lynch is paid $5 million. Combined, you're paid $15+ million a year to get it right. What fucking social media? I don't even know what. Really, when the media to me says social media, they mean Twitter. They're not talking about anything else but Twitter, and that's where you cannot listen to that, good or bad. I do think Kyle's right, and just in general, in players. So many of them live on that. Like, when you have a great game, everyone's blowing you. When you have a terrible game, they all fucking think you're the worst. And you can write. I know me personally, just deleting it from my phone has changed my mood. And I think part of today was like, yeah, guys, we are not it's not going to matter what they say today, ultimately, once they make the pick. But they're kind of establishing, like, we're not doing this to make everyone happy. We're doing this to try to win. And we think this is the best way to win.
Which will make everyone happy. I've said it a million times. We're kind of dancing around the Mac Jones part of this. But if it's Mac Jones, and I'm not convinced that it will be.
I've heard no way it is.
No, I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying whoever it is. If it's Justin Fields, believe that. If it's Justin Fields, it won't be, because Justin Fields like one of the most universally loved prospects.
I just think that I do think it's natural when you're like a 5-star and you've been good at a big program.
And the numbers are good.
People always gravitate.
I also think what happens if you get one of those if like the Orlovsky thing happens, right? Like, somebody criticizes something that no one.
It happened
really
with Lamar when
everyone overcorrects the other way. We'll see. Yeah. But we'll see. But my point is, no matter who they take, it will be because that's their evaluation, not anyone else's. And we've talked about this for years when it comes to college coaching hires. If I was an AD, I wouldn't listen to the alums who tell me we need to have one of our guys. I don't know. I just know this. Whatever he does, and he knows this, whatever he does, no matter who he picks, Fields, Lance, Jones, the heat's on either way. Like, it's just, is the heat on Friday or is the heat on week 1? Because the heat that matters is the one that starts week 1. That's the one that matters. One
thing to me that he just basically admitted, I'll tell you in 1 second, wineaccess.com/ham. Go check it out. 20% off. Wineaccess.com/ham. Get you bottles, deliver them presents to your mom, to your dad, to your wife. There's nothing better than a present that no one knows coming. It's easy on your birthday, on holidays. Do it randomly, like late April, early May. All of a sudden, some bottles of wine hit your front door. all of a sudden they open it. They're like, damn, wineaccess.com/ham, 20% off. Can't recommend it enough.
Here's the great thing about wineaccess.com/ham. John said it, 20% off your first order. It can be one $15 bottle. It can be one $1,000 bottle. It can be 5 bottles for $100. I think it's 5. Is it 5 or 6 bottles or $120? You get free shipping. It's very easy. And the 20% still applies. Even if the 20% takes you under the 120, you still get the free shipping. So it's a great deal. They got wine clubs, but it's not subscription-based. You can just one-off send a box of 4 wines to somebody. Only one of 18 bottles they sample make it to the site. Very high quality. So if you know a lot about wine, you're going to see a bunch of great product. If you don't know a lot about wine, like me, they're going to help you. You're going to have the ability to be confident that whatever you send out is great. Plus, every bottle comes with this cool play sheet, basically. It tells you what it's all about. So,
well, that's what Kyle will be doing. And they admitted, I think, what we already know. Like, they know who they're picking. Like, right now, the guy at the top of their board, unless someone, I would say the Jets, take someone that they don't expect.
But don't you still believe they know who the Jets are taking?
Yeah, but what if the Jets do something kind of out of left field? Like, what if all of a sudden they take Justin Fields?
Right. I'm just saying, do you think right now, I believe right now the Niners believe they know who the Jets are taking.
Yes, but I don't think, like, they don't know 1 million like, it just could, never know. Maybe you were getting played by Joe Douglas. Who knows? Like, I would imagine that Saleh and those guys have been honest.
That's the plot twist, is like Saleh's the one who's been lying the whole time.
But I think you saw John Lynch say, I didn't necessarily know this. I thought Kyle has the drafting power. He claimed that he does. I don't know why he would lie about that.
I didn't quite get. He said the draft is mine, but then he said something else. Like, Kyle takes my. I know he hears my opinion. So I don't know. I didn't quite know what to make of that.
The way I took it was, I have 53-man power, or I have the draft pick power. Maybe not 53-man power. I have the draft pick power. But as a general manager, it would make no sense if you liked your coach. Like, when Ryan Pace took Trubisky, he didn't tell John Fox. He knew he wanted to fire John Fox, right? And obviously it just was a disaster all the way around. But in this situation, and I'd say the same thing with Joe Douglas, that you would not take a quarterback that your coach, and in Joe Douglas's case, the coach/offensive coordinator didn't want. Like, what would you be doing? Like, what's the point of the whole partnership or relationship? Because once you get into a relationship or a partnership, they become the same thing with the GM and head coach. No different than a marriage. And the more comfortable and the more you can trust each other, the more you communicate. I mean, you're a married man, the easier it is. And I think the one thing's clear, like, John's no dummy, that you want to do what the coaching staff, like, especially when your head coach is the play caller, and that's what he said. Like, my head coach is our play caller and essentially is our quarterback coach, even though technically he's not. But, I mean, let's face it, he is. And I think this goes to Joe Douglas. Like, that's where what you're saying, I would imagine that Robert Saleh, they would just be on the same page. There's no like, we wanted the other guy and Joe Douglas made us draft this guy. Wouldn't that just be, that'd be old Jets, like disaster from the jump?
But I would say their dynamic, I do have some sympathy for their dynamic being more difficult than the Niners dynamic, right? You're Joe Douglas. You hired Robert Saleh. You like Mike LaFleur enough. Maybe you wouldn't have hired Robert Saleh if he wasn't bringing LaFleur. Maybe that was part of the deal. But Mike LaFleur could be gone in a year or two if it goes well, right? You're going to draft the guy that you don't like the most because he says this is the guy I want. Like, that's where it gets tough. How could you do that if you're Joe Douglas? If you like Justin Fields and your OC, who's brand new, who you've never really worked with, he's never been a play caller before, goes, no, I'm telling you, BYU, that's the guy. We want Zach. I mean, again, you're right. Like, ideally, it's this, and everyone's on the same page. But I can see how, in execution, it doesn't quite always work that way practically. It's
very difficult as a general manager when your head coach is not the play caller and you're in the quarterback acquisition business, right? Because your head coach is just, in Robert Saleh's, in fairness to him, why would he not listen 100% unequivocally to everything that LaFleur is telling him? Because he's dependent on LaFleur to have a good offense. He has nothing to do with it. He really doesn't. Especially early on, and I know technically he's not even the defensive coordinator this year, but has nothing to do with offense. So it is a challenging spot for them where it is much more fluid. What I'd be fascinated to know, if the Niners were drafting 2, Would Zach Wilson be the lock pick? I don't know.
It's hard to say lock. I mean, they. Do you believe? Let me ask you this: Do you believe Shanahan when he says they like enough quarterbacks? He's like, we liked 5 guys when we moved up. We really liked 3, right?
Yeah, so I think that he knew that obviously Trevor Lawrence, everyone likes him. They like Zach Wilson. They assumed he was going to, and they like the other 3 guys.
Yeah,
they think there are 5 legit quarterbacks in this draft. I do believe him when he's saying that.
Yeah, which makes me think he might draft Zach Wilson if he had the chance.
If you tell me that he takes, but here's where I would push back on that. That over this month, when they've really dug deep and met all these guys, now they haven't done as much digging on Zach Wilson in the sense of I don't think they didn't pro day work him out with Kyle there. But
somebody said he was. That's when they did the deal. He was at Zach Wilson's pro day. Remember that?
No,
somebody else at his pro day.
Lynch and Peters were there because I talked to someone that saw them there, or Peters was there, but Kyle was not. What I'm saying is that after they got around like Lance, Fields, and Mack, maybe they fell more in love with those guys. Now, part of it is they just spent more time with them.
Yeah.
Right. But
and John Beck got the time.
But
Beck worked with Zach.
Let's say
Wilson
they
too.
take Field or Lance. I do believe that Kyle really liked Mac Jones. Like if they don't take Mac Jones, I will believe that Kyle really liked Mac Jones. Like I do think that Mac Jones would make a lot of sense with Kyle. Right. Like he would just naturally gravitate toward that human.
Yeah.
Or that player / human.
Yeah.
But I'll give Kyle credit if they take Field or Lance for understanding that you got. And I know Kyle I think it's a little scary the way that press conference ended was just kind of hammer home the Drew Brees and just hammer home. Like it's not about just running around, right? It is about throwing. It is about making throws. And that is true.
The mobility he prioritizes is within the pocket.
Yes. But I do think there's an element of playmaking outside of the pocket that the best guys in the league clearly have right now. And that includes everyone non-Tom Brady, old and young. Rodgers, Russell, Watson, Mahomes, Josh Allen. That's
basically
kind of
everybody, but even Tannehill can run a little bit.
Yeah, Tannehill's a wide receiver.
But he's not really making plays behind the line of scrimmage to create more throws, right?
Yeah, he can keep it alive. But, I mean, he's a good athlete.
Yeah.
He's like a little bit more physically gifted Alex Smith, but Alex is probably a better quarterback. But I think he's in that vein.
He's in a better situation.
Like even Alex, once he got to Kansas City, like the athlete that he was with Urban Meyer, he wasn't like you wouldn't if you just watched him and didn't know about his athleticism, you wouldn't go, that's an elite athlete. But he is a good athlete,
yeah.
Right?
But again, what's weird about Alex athletically,
would Kyle have loved peak Alex Smith in Kansas City?
I don't know.
I think he would have.
Loved? You think he would have loved him?
He loved Kirk Cousins.
I don't know. Who's got a better arm downfield?
Cousins' arm's gotten better. Yeah.
Cousins. Yeah. You know what I started wondering last night was would Kyle have taken Tua over Herbert last year?
That's a hell of a question.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know the answer to that either. I also think that one, in fairness to everybody, and that's what's going to be fascinating about this. The conversation completely shifted on the axis of of where they started and where it is now. It's just complete opposite, right? It was here and now it's over here. Like it couldn't have shifted any stronger. Like there wasn't, go back to the Watson, but in fairness, I think a lot of people thought Watson would be solid. Watson over Trubisky, you took the worst guy in the same conference. To me, the Mahomes thing, though, is kind of out of nowhere. Like, no one was acting like he was sweet, and it didn't shock anyone. People love Tua. People question Herbert. And then by the end of the season, there was just, even if you were a Tua diehard, you had to go, whoa.
Yeah.
I'd want that back.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that there's a chance that could shift still. Like, I don't think Herbert's skills, he might play bad or whatever, but his skills are elite. Like, that won't change. Like, Tua doesn't have what Herbert has in his toolbox. I do think you'll just know that this year with kind of this group. You watch 17 games of Wilson, of Lawrence, of whoever the Niners, like you do get a feel for their physical attributes. Especially like if it is Mac, like he is playing on a good team.
It's why we didn't have much Burrow last year, but watching him, one thing was clear was the stuff he did in college athletically translated, right? Like he is a much better creator from within the pocket than like Mac Jones is, for example, right?
Looked like a more buttoned up Romo from the jump.
Yeah, and that was your comp, I think, for a while, and I think it's good, although I think he's probably hopefully for them makes less mistakes, right?
I do think the NFL is a little easier to play than some of Romo's early years, right? I mean, concussions, and when I mean concussions, like back when you could get crushed, guys weren't as open. It is. I watched some highlights of like Julio Jones earlier. Now, obviously, he's an all-time great. There's just a lot of openings of green grass when you're running. I mean, you watch like a Steve Young highlight or a Troy Aikman highlight or some early Favre, even in those 2000s, like the Mannings. I mean, there are just bodies getting blasted. The game does look dramatically different. I'm not trying to hate on it or whatever. I enjoy this NFL, but it is, and I've heard Steve Young talk about it's dramatically more quarterback friendly,
right. Which is better for the sport because they're the biggest stars in the sport, and there's not even enough of them to start on every team.
And it's still you're still getting hit and stuff. It's not like two-hand touch, but it's guys are much more open.
Yeah.
So I think the pushback on just some of the numbers and the guys wide open. That's where my stance is on why you got to play the guy. Probably regardless who it is, because there's never been an easier kind of landing spot, right?
Yes, and again, I know you may not be talking about a guy that's the level of prospect as Robert Griffin, but I've seen Kyle coach a rookie quarterback. It went really well. He was
the Heisman Trophy winner.
Again, I know it's not the same level of, especially if it's Trey Lance, but that's really what we're talking about when we say this, right? It's Trey Lance.
And he did a lot more. Like he only threw 20 touchdowns. He dominated on the ground. And if I remember correctly, his rookie year, Alfred Morris had like 1,700 yards. So,
good. The Niners can run the football.
Well, yeah. I mean, their game plan will be to run the rock.
I mean, but I'm with you. I think there's a lot of reason to play a guy right away, even if it's Trey Lance. But that's part of what the last few weeks went a bit. Now, the other thing Kyle said was if you're going to be excited about a guy at 12, you should be excited about him at 3. I do understand, and this goes back to we were talking about the trade value earlier. I do understand just right now, this second, if they were sitting there at 12, or if they were sitting there at 8, or if they had moved up to 6, they would have done that. They would have traded picks to do that too, and they'd be sitting here right now feeling like they're completely out of control of whatever's about to happen, right? Like you have to like the 5th best quarterback in the draft as much as you like, or almost as much as you like the 3rd best quarterback in the draft to move up and still not really have any control. So
they paid a premium to have control. I do think we'll find out, and there's no way to know at the time. And it's not like I guess when you overpay for something with money, unless you have unlimited amounts of money, there is like the difference of the amounts of cash do matter. With draft picks, if you go, I'm getting my franchise quarterback, what's the difference between giving you 2 1s or 3 1s? Like if I'm getting my franchise guy, who gives a shit? And I think him kind of using kind of the Rams as an example, like he should have thrown in Stafford too. Like what does anyone care? They're giving away all these 1s. They keep winning. It works, right?
Right. Yeah.
Now that's again, my pushback is Kyle, you're talking about established players. You were talking about like they did that for Matt Stafford, who I think the fan base here really wanted because he's tangible, we can touch him, and he's just talented. And then same thing with Jalen. We're talking plug and play. Rookies are not plug and play. Even and you've been hammering this home. Like there is every single guy could miss, whether it's Jamar Chase. Like there's a chance. Like some of these guys that we're blowing right now, whether it's a wide receiver, whether it's a quarterback, they're gonna have an underwhelming first year. And one of the guys that like, oh my God, can you believe that Jalen Waddle just broke Justin Jefferson's rookie wide receiver record?
And he was the fourth. He was the fourth pass catcher off the board.
It happened last year. I mean, I think Justin Jefferson is a great example. In no world was he talked about with the other 3 or 4 guys.
No.
And if you could redo the draft,
in no world was he talked about. Was Brandon Ayuk? I mean, Ayuk.
No. Yeah.
It was like, oh, don't worry about this Stephon Diggs trade. Justin Jefferson will make you guys forget about that. As Stephon Diggs is balling. That's pretty strong.
But it happened with the linemen too. I mean, the Giants took Thomas with the 4th pick. The All-Pro turned out to be the dude on the Super Bowl winning team worse. Like if you
I
could,
do wonder if he had been on the Giants, would we talk about him differently? A little.
probably, but I mean, you're either good at that position or not. Obviously,
Yeah.
it helps. I mean, they're offensive weapon for sure. But like, I do think like, would the Tampa trade with the Giants right now? Because the Giants surely would.
Tampa would absolutely not do that deal.
So would the 49ers trade Brandon Ayuk for Henry Ruggs right now?
No.
No chance. Would the Raiders? They'd at least have a meeting.
They'd have a meeting. I don't know if they would do that deal
but
either.
I don't think either. But my point is, like, this is how fast things change. Because everything right now is based off no information. None. Like, you knew, like, 5 games in, it's like, oh, my God. You took Sammy Watkins over Khalil Mack. Like, you know immediately. And that is the powerful thing about the draft. Now, your rookie year does not determine whether you're going to the Hall of Fame or whether you're going to be a bust. But you do know immediately, like, God, we wish we had that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Max.
That is a big thing for Kyle on this whole quarterback. Like, is it right away? Like, okay, something there, or is it like, whoa?
Well,
Whoever that is.
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to, again, he's the one that gets to coach the guy, right? So part of this is, I think he can be better with you than he can be with somebody else. That's part of it. I think you have the best chance to get the most out of him. So if you pick wrong, now you can't squeeze, lemon juice out of a
lemon?
Orange? You can't squeeze lemon juice out of a granola bar. Like, if you just pick the wrong thing, there's no juice to squeeze. There's no juice to squeeze. Doesn't matter how good you are.
Remember how good the chocolate chip granola bars when someone would have them at like school lunch when you're like 5th grade?
Those little ones with like the little marshmallow, the Quaker Oats, those?
Oh, those
you
were
could
good.
eat them in like half a bite.
Good little snack for a kid. I'd eat one right now.
Let's see. You want to go through a few of these?
One more thing I don't think we've touched
going.
on yet. I mean, a little bit of news, which I guess what are they going to do? But they picked up McGlinchey's 5th-year option, which I think was a fair question to ask. I don't think for any means it was a lock. He just has to play better. And I know some people, when they get mad, like, he's a good run blocker. You get paid in this league to pass protect. Like, I can find tackles to run block. Can you functionally pass protect? That is where you get, if you're like, the reason Trent Williams makes $22 million a year, the reason that the Orlando Brown wanted out of, the Baltimore and go to Kansas City to get a huge contract, you get paid to pass protect at tackle. Now, I text someone the other day. I said, is Orlando Brown really a left tackle? He's like, left, right tackle. It's kind of a myth nowadays. And you and I have talked about it forever. Good thing is, like, with the AFC and NFC West, they have a lot of pass rushers that, like, oh, is that a Chandler Jones lined up over the right tackle?
Right,
oh, is that the Bosa's lined up over there?
You and I talked about it for years watching the Raiders. Khalil Mack
always lined up over the right tackle. So your right tackle, like, he has to, like, okay, he can fucking run block. Cool. You got to be able to pass protect. That's, to me, he has to be better there. Clearly, he's never going to be elite, but he has to be way better, or it is a problem.
I do think at this point, 11
you think they
million.
had a choice?
I don't. I think a lot of times you end up in a spot where you don't have a choice and you pick it up because even though it's expensive, it's not completely cost prohibitive, and you can just focus on other things. So 10.8 or 11, whatever it is, on the 5th-year option for him. He's got to be better.
Got to be careful with that mindset of, like, think about any business, like that. Your tackles are a major part of your operation.
Part of that is the belief that he can be better than he was.
He has to be.
Right. Because if he is, then you go, see, no biggie.
But to me, at this point in time, like, no one's expecting to be Pro Bowl level. Can you just feel okay about it?
For sure. No, I'm with you. It's not about Pro Bowl. That's what I'm saying. Is like at $11 million for another year, doesn't have to be amazing, but it's just got to be. If we can just get it a little better, that's one less thing we got to worry about. We can get back to that later, right?
Yeah. He has a fatal flaw. And I think when you look at him and Colton Miller, both were like 6'8.5", 6'9". Colton's talent of like his God-given athleticism just allows you. These guys are fucking quicker than they've ever been coming off the edge. So even if either of them are not like, Trent Williams strong, when you can mirror a guy, like, you don't need to be the fastest guy in the NBA, but if you got quick feet, you can just stay in front of somebody. And I think you see with McGlinchey, like, he just looks slow-footed. And so, like, you just have to find a way to either become coached up better. You don't. Howard Mudd, the late RIP, told me, and he's fucking dead on, the most overrated thing as a lineman is, like, how much they bench. Like, can they get stronger? Like, your inherent, like, innate strength by, like, 22, 23. You don't see a guy who was, like, very weak at 22 at, like, 28, 29 be the most powerful guy in the league. Like, Quentin Nelson, Trent Williams, like, those guys road graded at 19. They road grade at 30. Like, McGlinchey's game is kind of his game. Now, can they coach up to get around some of those limitations? Because he has a major limitation, that's foot quickness, which can be a problem at tackle.
Yeah, with hindsight, there's nothing you can do about the pick now, right? When you draft a tackle that high, you want to, it's a position you don't have to worry about for a decade. That's not the position they're in.
No.
But they do have to just go, okay, can this be solid enough for another year or two? And then we can figure out beyond that whether or not it may not, that might be the last year he plays for the 49ers. Or he might be better and they extend him and you go, we didn't nail the pick, but it wasn't a bust either. I don't know. Time will tell.
Players. This is the last thing I'm going to, my last McGlinchey take. When you draft this, like, and we've met him, from Philadelphia, Notre Dame, tough guy. He does a little too much worry about social media for me. Like, Mike, like, just don't fucking worry about the clowns and the booger eaters. Let's just focus on blocking people. Like, last year was a little like, Mike, I didn't know you were worried about this crap. And I think he was just in his own head.
I know. That surprised me because I would have thought
he'd be the last guy.
He'd be the last guy. And I thought, maybe what Kyle said in his press conference is a message. I mean, I would hope that would be part of the message he delivers, because he said whether you're a GM or a high school kid, whoever you are, if you get really involved in social media, it will affect your decision making, like from the business that he's in. And I think people will be proud that it will not affect our decision. That's what Kyle Shanahan said today. And I think that applies to that situation too. So I don't know. I don't know if he feels like it's affected play or it's just one other thing that's been on the guy's mind that gets in the way. But, Chris Peterson always used to say, I always thought it was a great line, and you've scouted Chris Peterson's players, that you got to have, in order to get the most out of yourself as a football player, and this is really, he always talked about stuff for life too, but he'd always just say you have to have your room in order, right? Now, did he literally mean you had to have all your books and clothes off the ground and your bed made?
You make your bed every morning?
My bed is made every morning, yes. I am not a natural bed maker every morning, but I did have a pretty good run over the course of the last several months where I just, you fold it up. I wouldn't do the full, like all the extra pillows, but just the pull back, the fold forward, put
every
the pillows
successful
on.
person I've ever heard, definitely a speaker or motivational speaker, always say that's goes hand in hand.
Yeah, it's not nothing. As someone who had a good run of it, I'll say it's not nothing. And that was always Chris Peterson's thing. And again, he wasn't literally talking about that, but he was kind of talking about that. Like, just have everything in order, just in your personal life. Have your school in order. Have your how's your housing situation in order. Have everything in order. Make sure get your car's oil changed on time so it doesn't break down on you on the way to practice because you put it off. Make sure you never run it on empty. All that kind of stuff. And you will be a better football player if your life is in order. Now, sometimes things that happen out of your control, and now you've got to scramble to try keep everything together. That's life. But he said it all the time, and I think that's kind of what Kyle is saying, not directly about McGlinchey. He's just talking about this draft. Like, we're going to follow our process. We're going to scout the way we scout, and in the end, we're going to reach a conclusion, which we will be accountable for. We'll be accountable for it. Duh. But we're going to make it based on what we think is best. And then if we fail, we fail. That's on us. But we're going to know we did it for our reasons, not for anybody else's reasons. It's again, I think it's wild to me whenever a team doesn't do it that way. But you've been around the league. Like, owners get involved. People get in people's ears. People get afraid. It's why I always think it's dangerous. You end up with a team like the Bears are in a really weird spot where now you're fighting for your life as a GM, and it's like, are you going to do how as an owner can I trust you to not do something short-sighted because you're trying to save your career or your job, even though it may not be in the best interest of my organization? It's a weird spot to be in.
One thing that really sticks out to me in my experience around these evaluators is Ryan Grigson, the former Colts GM. He always used to hammer home, be a glass half full scout, not a glass half empty scout. And there's some truth to that. But in my opinion of just the evaluators I was around, he was one of the worst. And I think too often he kept guys alive because you didn't want to be viewed as like a negative Nancy. And his drafting history in Indy speaks for itself. And I think there's a balance of, like you said, like you believe that everyone, like not doing something is just as bad as doing something crazy and failing. There is a balance, though, of like doing something. Not every player is going to be good. Not every player is worth these high selections. Right. And they believe that there are 5 quarterbacks worth starting. And I think a lot of teams, if they said that, they'd be blowing smoke. I think the Niners have a track record now. When those two guys speak, they're pretty candid about, like, I don't think he's lying there. I think he likes all 5 of these quarterbacks. Like if Belichick had said that, I'd be like, that's kind of weird, right? There would be some teams that I wouldn't necessarily believe. I think he's telling the truth. But I think you have to there's a balance of just really wanting something and doing it the right way is probably the wrong way to put it, but being careful about not being too desperate, right? There's a balance of like knowing what you need and not being desperate and also not paying. Because I think part of what makes Mahomes and Josh Allen such special acquisitions by the Bills and by the Chiefs is those teams, even the Bills at the time, I think it just made the playoffs. They were like 9-7 or whatever. They didn't totally operate out of desperation. Where the Jets, when you remember, went from 6-3, gave up 3 or 4 second-round picks, and then it turned out they got a guy that if you could do that over, they would have taken Josh Allen over Sam Darnold. The Bills waited, the Chiefs waited, and they pounced. And they say the best deals in life, right, if you buy a house, you buy a business, are made out of not being desperate. And there just is a little bit of desperation the way the Niners did this. Now, it doesn't mean it won't end up being the right spot. But like Kyle said, it's 100% true. There's pressure no matter who the fuck you are. There is dramatically, to me, more pressure in a situation when you trade. I think he pushed back on the 3 first-rounders. It's 2 first-rounders because they get a first-round pick.
And that's not us spinning for them because we've always talked about that. Wait a second. Something's a little.
It is 2 first-rounders and a third-round pick.
Yeah.
That is a lot. That is a lot.
Yeah.
And I think his point is on Jamal Adams. They are giving up 2 first-rounders, no different than we are, right? They're no flip-flopping picks. You're just giving 2 firsts and a second for those players. But not every player and not every situation is created equal. I just think that it's not as black and white as they're making it out to be. And I do think, given what they paid, if the guy is just okay, it's not a great deal, right? It's
if we're sitting here in a few years talking about 5th-year options.
But even if he's like, if he's like Dak Prescott or whatever.
Well, you and I, look, Baker, it turns out maybe was a no-brainer for the Browns. But you and I, like, to me, it was a no-brainer that they pick it up because Kevin Stefanski, they're on the right track. This could get better. But he has not played to this point like a guy that it's no doubt he's going to be a star and you nailed that pick, right?
In fairness, I mean, it's a new GM and stuff, right?
Yeah, well, a lot's changed. He had 2 head coaches in 2 years. Like, it's a weird situation, right? In fairness on the waiting. I follow you. Yeah.
3 head coaches basically in 3 years because he had Hugh the first year. Then he had Freddie. Now he's got Stefanski. Like, he has gone through a lot.
Part of this is about the other guys. If Mac Jones, if the Niners quarterback is solid and the 2 guys that we talked about aren't better than solid, then we go. Now, you could argue, well, yeah, I guess they picked the right guy at the 3, but in hindsight, they shouldn't have taken any of them, right? If all 3 of them are just not great, that would be the argument then. Like, okay, that's great. You got the best of the 3, but you still didn't have you still don't have a franchise quarterback.
Well, and this gets back to John and Kyle are very adamant. There are 5 legit starting quarterbacks. We just know for a fact that's not the case, or this will go down as the greatest draft in the history of the league, right? if all 5 guys are like top 18
Not
players,
just those
it's like,
five, right? Not just those five. Like Jamar Chase hits, Penei Sewell hits, Kyle Pitts is great. Alabama receivers can't. Both of them. Who knew? Rashawn's. I mean, you're going to tell me there's going to be like 8 Pro Bowlers. Now maybe it's one of the all-time great drafts.
Yeah.
But the odds are 2 of these quarterbacks are not starting quarterbacks in 3 years.
Yeah, and a lot has to do, in fairness, they're not all apples to apples, right? If Trevor Lawrence fails, it may just be because Jacksonville's a failure, which they have been.
Yeah.
If Zach Wilson goes, it may be that he was overhyped, and it just, looking back, he probably would have been better off in the second round, a little less pressure, but it's just not the way it happened. If Mac Jones ends up going to the Broncos and they're just a disaster for the next 3 or 4 years, it might not be all his fault. But that's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes, right? Usually the Bengals and the Browns and the Lions, like those teams historically draft high. But I would say like the super talent always emerge. Like for as shitty as the Lions have been the last decade, I do think Stafford was well respected in the league and everyone thought he was good. Like elite talents, like the Ravens were kind of in shambles. Lamar got there, I was like, damn, they got something. Right? And some guys need a little bit more stability and get to develop like a Josh Allen.
Yeah.
So everyone, there are no apples to apple situations. But God, the pressure on this pick is just on him to be good, right? He doesn't have to be a Hall of Famer, but if he's not good, it's a failure. And they know that. I mean, they just admitted that.
Yeah, I mean,
if he's not good, it's a failure for what they gave.
Yeah, why I'm pausing is just part of me almost wants you got to be a little better. I mean, like good is good, but is good franchise quarterback? Because if it's not franchise quarterback, then even that's not quite good enough.
I know, but if they're getting to the playoffs every year with the guy, you just can't.
If it's does it look like the Super Bowl year with Garoppolo? Not that you made it to the Super Bowl, but does he just look like Jimmy? And it's like if you got a really good team around him, you got a chance to go to a championship.
And part of it, the bar's low, right? The team that the Niners are not in a situation where they're replacing Brady, where they're replacing Aaron Rodgers. Like his landing spot is a little bit easier, right? They're not replacing Russell Wilson.
That's the other thing to your point. Like if he's just good, did the first round picks you gave up end up at 14 or are they at 25? Because if they're at 25, that will feel a little bit different too.
Yes.
Right? If like this year it's promising, but you win 6 games and the pick is at 12, you're like, ugh.
Yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah, I know he looks good, but 12? We just give up 12? 2 12s? Yeah.
If you go 9-8 and your pick's at 19, I think you could live with it if the kid shows a lot of promise.
Yeah. If it looks good, it looks promising. It looks promising. But, the other thing, I was just looking at by the way, everybody, we'll have a live stream on draft night when the Jags are on the clock. Do we know what time the Jags are on the clock? Is it going to end up being like 5:45?
100%. Yeah. 5:30 probably.
5:30?
Would be my guess. I mean, it never starts right away.
Yeah. So that means the Niners probably won't be on the clock till 6?
I'll look into that today. What time the draft starts? I assumed 5:30. That was my gut.
The first pick. Yeah, I assume it like the thing starts at 5, and then the first pick is. But I think what'll be interesting on draft night is, so they pick who they're picking at 3, and then what Atlanta does feels like it's kind of the point where when we're doing the post first round analysis of how high the Niners ultimately had to get their guy. Like if Atlanta takes a quarterback at 4, then it makes it feel a little more urgent that you had to move up to 3. If Atlanta doesn't take a quarterback and, Pitts goes and Chase goes and Sewell goes and the next thing you know, like the Panthers are on the clock and the fourth quarterback is right there, right? Like that'll feel a little different.
Well, 1, 2, 3 is historic. I think I've seen it on my timeline a couple times. I think it's 78 and obviously the McNabb 99 draft. Like it's happened like twice in the modern day NFL. 1, 2, 3. I don't think 1, 2, 3, 4 has ever happened. For a long period of time, when you and I were born, you were taking running backs number 1 overall.
Yeah.
Right? So the league, I think if you're Kyle Shanahan or Belichick's good on this. He's like, what does 1979 have to do with 2022 or 1, right? It's like the league's changed. When people say, this or that, or what was it like having the number 1 defense in 2001? You're like, what does that have to do with 2021, right? The league's changed. There's more team, whatever. It's not apples to apples. But 1, 2, 3, I think the reality just shows like there aren't often 3 guys worthy of going 1, 2, 3. Yeah. And sometimes there are just other guys that are just, they're just a player that you go, like if there had been an all-time quarterback draft the year the Niners had the second pick, let's say it was like Kyler Murray, Josh Allen's, and Andrew Luck's, and Cam Newton in the same draft the year the Niners. Maybe the Niners do take a quarterback right there. It's just you're too good to pass, right? But in that draft, it was like Kyler Murray. You're like, fuck, we've got to take Nick Bosa. And this year, like, what if Nick Bosa, and you and I talked about this on the pod yesterday, what if a Bosa brother, probably more Nick than Joey, even though Joey went at 3. I don't think he was viewed as a top 5 pick. Let's use Nick, let's use Myles Garrett, and let's use Chase Young. If that guy was in this draft, I think most people would be like, if I'm Atlanta, I'd probably just take that guy. Right?
Absolutely.
And that guy just doesn't exist here. So, and that's where, like, I think these quarterbacks have kind of taken that guy's slot. Because that guy usually trumps the tackle. For as great as we love, like, I mean, we don't necessarily love the tackles. And I think most teams, it's kind of boring when your team takes a left tackle or even a right tackle. But the pass rushers are never not boring. Like, that's a big deal, right? When you take Myles Garrett, because you go, fuck, Khalil Mack, we're going to get a 10-sack guy. It's sweet.
Look at Chase Young. Like, who thought Washington was going to be in the playoffs last year?
No, he was dominant. But even, I mean, Bosa was way better than advertised.
Yeah.
And I remember Steve Keim going, this was not easy. We love Nick Bosa. Like, he was viewed as a number 1 overall pick. That human being the best pass rusher in this year's draft has, like, concussions, is transferred. I mean, it's just a little
retired.
Weird. Yeah. Usually that pass rusher is like, when you get a Bosa, when you get a Myles Garrett, when you get a Chase Young, that guy, Clowney, is a star at like 18, 19 years old, right?
Even Mack, who went to Buffalo, it's like it became apparent pretty quickly he was a flawless. Once he was a pro, it was like, this guy actually is a flawless prospect, right?
But I remember him getting hyped going into a senior season, like, this guy is a dude.
Well, if he had been at somewhere other than Buffalo, he would have been viewed as a flawless prospect, probably.
Well,
but it turned out that's what he was.
If you put Khalil Mack at USC or Oklahoma, probably there's no way he lasts till 5, right? He might just go 2.
No way.
No chance. But and that's my point. Like, I think if they take Trey Lance, they'd go, if you put Trey Lance at Oklahoma, he's probably the lock number 2 overall pick, right?
If he's been doing it for a couple of years.
That's where quarterbacks can mess with you a little bit, because you got to project. And same with other positions, and I guess we also do it unless you're an elite prospect like a Luck or a Lawrence. We do kind of nitpick, like, did Mac Jones have it too easy? Zach Wilson was a schedule too shitty. So you play that game no matter what. Part of the draft.
That's why I think when they sit there on Thursday night after the first round, they'll be able to justify whoever they took. And we'll be able to look back at the last month and all the hints and all the things they said and go, okay, it was now looking back, I know what they were saying. And we might be, it might be false that we're attaching those conclusions. Daniel says in the comments, if that press conference wasn't the Niners organization getting ahead of the Mac Jones backlash, I don't know what is. Again, that's why they do
schedule legally obligated, league rules.
Well, Kyle wasn't obligated, was he?
Yeah, you text me. You thought he was bored.
I think Kyle wants to get it on the phone.
Well, honestly, why do you think he showed up?
I mean, I think we could come up with it. Probably maybe a schedule opened. I think they've done a lot of their work. I think they know what they're going to do. I think maybe he doesn't want to send John out there by himself.
Present a united front.
Maybe he enjoys it to some degree. Just kind of this whole, I don't mean enjoys it in a weird way. I just, like, Kyle said it. He said, what was he saying? He's like, he said a couple times something along the lines of, we have the most popular sport in the world. And then he said country. He's like, in his head, he's like soccer. But I don't.
League.
Huh?
Super
F1.
League people would be pissed.
Did you see Spotify apparently is bidding on Arsenal, and it like coincided with Spotify getting $1 more expensive for Spotify Premium?
Guy, do you know that I owned about 10 grand of Spotify 300% ago? And I told a good buddy that I went to college with, I'm like, he was out here a couple years ago. I'm like, I'm telling you, I'm in the podcast business. A girlfriend, she listens. I got brother. It's like, I'm telling you, this is where it's going. He's like, seriously? This guy works in construction. He bought a bunch of it. He's like, God, I tripled my money. I sold. It's just one of those things. When I saw earlier today, they were up like 15%. So it must have been a story broke. I mean, Spotify. Bye-bye radio.
Trading at $2.98 right now.
I think I owned at $75.
It's okay. You made money.
No, I didn't. But it was more like I knew where it was going. And then it was like they had this run right after I sold. I swear to God, in 3 months, signed Simmons, signed Michelle Obama, signed Rogan, and it tripled. I mean, it legitimately doubled within like 2 months. It was crazy. And it was like I knew it. They're a little like Netflix. It's like they just got more money than everyone else. Like they're coming for everybody. You know what threw me off is they were like based in Amsterdam. I remember like this is kind of weird. Like, do they really got what it takes?
Stockholm, Sweden. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
so that you said they're bidding on.
I saw a story that apparently they're trying to buy Arsenal, the soccer team. Anyway, sorry, I got sidetracked. Kyle, I think has this. I like the dynamic that he's got this interesting dynamic of like not caring about the outside noise, but also understanding the game of it all. And I think the game he feels like he's playing is not the media game. I think he feels like he's playing the NFL chess game, right? When he says, I don't want other people to know what we're up to. You're like, well, why? What do you have to lose? I think is a natural response. And I think his answer is be like, no, what do I have to gain? Forget about what I have to lose. What do I have to gain? If 3 people I've told I don't really want them to know, but I think I can trust them, what do I have to gain if I lose an extra 5 minutes of sleep over just not knowing that I'm in total control? I traded 2 number ones and a third. Some would call it 3 ones and a third. But I traded 2 ones and a third to move up to 3. I moved up, John. I paid that price to control my destiny. And now I'm going to give some of that back? Why? Why would I do that? Well, it's not going to hurt anything. Well, it's not going to help anything. Like, I think that's the game that he thinks he's. I don't think he thinks he's playing the rap sheet Schefter game, although he might enjoy some of that.
Do you think he told, like, do you think someone from the Niners told Rap Sheet that?
Told Rap Sheet they're down to their last 2?
To fuck with everybody? Because the way he talked today, that they're definitely not in that game, but it felt like Rap Sheet got it from the Niners. And he has before. So
well, yeah, but I would say this, like, Did you read? Does that guy seem like to you? He's still trying to figure it out. I think he knows who he's picking, which means that if they told Rap Sheet that, then it's not true. I don't think he's down to his last 2. I think he knows who he's picking. Yeah.
So you're saying that maybe Rap Sheet didn't get it from the Niners?
Yeah, or he did, and they're just like I think to your point.
Yeah, they know. He admitted it.
This goes back to maybe you want you to know, maybe we don't want you to know. Maybe he did a lot of that. So it wouldn't shock me if they told Rap Sheet, yeah, say we're down to our last 2. That wouldn't shock me at all. But what I'm saying is,
he's lying or telling the truth?
I think it's a lie. The Niners?
But you think it's a lie that do you think they would lie about it being those 2 guys? What if it's been Justin Fields this whole time? They're just fucking with everybody.
Yeah, I think they would lie about that.
Yeah, I do too.
But what I'm saying is, I think all this is fun on some level. It's good for them. Like, it's a reminder that this organization, when they're relevant, is a powerhouse. And when they're not relevant, it's a story that they're not, right?
Did you see Michael Lombardi's tweet today that he had heard Fields no way he's going 3?
Yeah, I did see that. Where do you think he got that from?
Did
Kyle tell Bill?
Yeah, but Bill would just go right to Lombardi, who then tweeted out. Like, that's not really Bill style.
Yeah, I don't know. I think what I'm getting back to, I do think they're playing a game. I just think their primary game is the game they're playing with the rest of the league, not the game they're playing with us on social media, us on YouTube, NFL Network, ESPN.
Yes.
And, the side benefit of playing the game that they're playing with the NFL is that this all becomes a game on the side for us.
Truth.
But you think they know?
I think they basically admitted it today.
Yeah. But and then added, but maybe we don't. We don't want you to know that we know.
They know. I mean, if the draft was in 10 minutes, they would have a pick.
They'd be ready. Although they were a little late, and John did seem like he'd been running down the hall. Lynch was a little out of breath when that thing started.
Do you think they feel great about all the other positions? Because it does show you, and we talk about this a lot, like no other position holds a candle to this position. Like there was not. Now part of it is obviously they made the trade, but no one. Because sometimes we're like getting ready for a podcast. Like, should we talk about the second round? I'm like, I just don't. I don't care. They don't even care. Now they do. I think once you close doors, they've got it ready. But there was one conversation when they talked to Jed. It's like talking quarterbacks. They do have other picks.
Well, that's to your point. Like their work on this pick is done, but there might be other work to get done.
Yeah, I think they have 6 or 7 picks.
What are we doing?
I don't even know.
Are we trading? Right. Well, John Lynch said they have 160. Can we hit on this for a second? You've been in draft rooms. They have 160 draftable players. 160 players are gone by the time you're a third of the way through the 5th round. That's 160.
But if you only have 16 first rounders after 32 picks, you only thought 16 of them were worthy. Now, a lot of those picks that get drafted, it's not like a dude gets drafted at 20. You're like, well, he wasn't our first round. He's not even on our board. Like that guy's probably a 2nd or 3rd rounder on your board.
Yeah, you have him. You're saying, but to me, 160 means
like if Najee Harris gets drafted, let's just say 20 by the Bears. You'd go, well, we didn't have that guy in the 1st round, but we had him valued. Like you have him as a draft.
He's in there 160.
Player. Yeah.
Just as a 2nd rounder. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But
and then there are guys that for maybe scheme specific that are just not on your board that you go, we wouldn't draft this guy, but he's a draftable in the league. But on our board, because really your board is just value to you. You cannot like a guy because he wouldn't be a scheme fit as a defensive tackle, let's say, or an offensive lineman that wouldn't fit your offensive line scheme, and you wouldn't draft him. That doesn't mean like he's not necessarily now he wouldn't count as one of these 160s, but I think they would say like we understand like he's going to get drafted. He's just not on our board.
Well, like the pass rusher from Miami might not be on their board, right? Jalen Phillips.
Yeah.
Might not be on their board. They might say not draftable for us.
100, and they might, every team has different character requirements. You yank guys off.
And or butt, John. You want to be an and guy, not a butt guy, in the words of Nick Saban.
It was a good. I mean, he really. I put that over a tweet and someone I forwarded. He's like a guy in the league's like, where'd you get this? And I forwarded him the whole thing. He's like, God, you took the craziest part of a well done rant by Nick. I'm like, yeah, it was a very well done. Like it was honestly, it's one of the more insightful things that like you'll ever hear a college coach say about the draft, right? I mean, it really was really well done.
Yeah, and then he just sprinkled in, and the strength coach wouldn't piss on him if he was on fire.
It's one of my favorite lines. I use it a lot with politicians.
It's such a great line.
It's incredible.
It's such a great
because remember
line.
He had the crazy ass strength coach that had to hate a lot of people over the years.
Which was his strength coach?
Remember the dude that Nick wouldn't make a position coach, so Kirby hired to be a special teams coach?
Yeah.
Cochran?
Yeah. Scott? Scott? Is that his name?
Yeah, he was just crazy. Like ESPN would do specials
strength
on
coaches
him. Like he was nuts. Yeah. But he was the highest paid strength coach in the country.
And wanted to be a position coach.
And Nick refused. In fairness to Nick, like you get so in deep with a human, you probably just couldn't see him any other way. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe
he didn't think he could be a coach.
You got to fit in or get out. If you can't fit in anymore. Also, I feel like Saban has this thing where it's like, he doesn't want people to stay too long.
And do you think? I mean, Nick was justified. He just won the national championship without him, right?
Right. So, all right, we'll do a live podcast tomorrow, right back here on this YouTube stream. Go check out the podcast. It's in our description. If you're not a podcast subscriber, we'd love to have you there. We appreciate the YouTube support as always. Like the video. The other thing we said this a lot when we were starting the podcast, John, and we got the Shanahan hat, which sold out. People keep emailing. We appreciate you. They long gone. We've got the last batch is going out today. Hopefully, I can get the last batch out this afternoon. But 44% of the United States, John, by the end of the week will have a person with a ham hat. 44% of this country, of the states in this country, will have a person with a ham hat in it. So we'll try to get to 100%. But one thing we like to say, we said this at the beginning of the podcast, and I think it helped things like our podcast growth, people buying hats, all that kind of stuff. Send it to your friends. If you liked it, share it. We appreciate that as well.
That's why when you go to wineaccess.com/ham and you use it, it keeps us in business. It allows when people go, what do you guys do for a day job? We're allowed to do this.
This is the day job.
Yeah. So wineaccess.com/amp. Go
We're
use it.
tubers.
Yeah, we're just streamers, tubers, streamers. We're like Jake Paul 7 years ago.
Buy
he just
your
started as a
ham
streamer.
Spotify stock now.
I know.
We're all in. We've got nothing but stock. We just 100% we're stock. All right. Anything else, Middlecoff? Good press conference, Niners.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. We'll see everybody back here tomorrow. And don't forget, when the Jags are on the clock, Haberman and Middlecoff are on the tube.